Hello everyone. Welcome back to another video on the IS-34 Tribulation Force channel. So it's been a while since I last posted my last video reading the Left Behind series. I read chapter 23 and I haven't posted any videos in a while for months now, but now I'm going back to continue reading the Left Behind series. I'm going to continue reading the series starting from page 431, chapter 24 of the first book of the Left Behind series, Left Behind. The first book of the Left Behind series, Left Behind, chapter 24, page 431. Let's go. Buck spent Saturday holed up in the otherwise empty Chicago Borough office, getting a head start on his article on the theory behind the disappearances. His mind continuously swirled, forcing him to think about Carpathia and what he would say in that piece about how the man seemed to be a perfect parallel to biblical prophecy. Fortunately, he could wait on writing that until after the big day Monday. Around lunchtime, Buck reached Steve Plank at the Plaza Hotel in New York. "I'll be there Monday morning," he said, "but I'm not inviting Hadi Durham." "Why not?" "It's a small request, friend to friend. You to me, Nick to you." "So now it's Nick, is it?" "Well, he and I are not close enough for that familiarity, and I don't provide female companionship even to my friends." "Not even for me?" "If I knew you would treat her with respect, Steve, I'd set you up with Hadi." "You're really not going to do this for Carpathia?" "No." "Am I uninvited?" "I'm not going to tell him." "How are you going to explain it when she doesn't know, when she doesn't show?" "How are you going to explain it when she doesn't show?" "I'll ask her myself, Buck, you prude." Buck didn't say he would warn Hadi not to go. He asked Steve if he could get one more exclusive with Carpathia before starting his cover story on him. "I'll see what I can do, but you can't even do a small favor and you want another break? He likes me, you said. You know, I'm going to do the complete piece on the guy. He needs this. If you watched TV yesterday, you know he doesn't need anything. We need him. Do we? Have you run into any schools of thought that link him to end times events of the Bible?" Steve Plank did not respond. "Steve, I'm here. Well, have you? Anybody that thinks you might fill the bill for one of the villains of the book of Revelation?" Steve said nothing. "Hello, Steve. I'm still here. Come on, old buddy. You're the press secretary. You know all. How is he going to respond if I hit him with that?" Steve was still silent. "Don't do this to me, Steve. I'm not saying that's where I am, or that anybody who knows anything or who mattered thinks that way. I'm doing the piece on what was behind the disappearances, and you know, that takes me into all kinds of religious realms. Nobody anywhere has drawn any parallels here?" This time when Steve said nothing, Buck merely looked at his watch, determined to wait him out. About 20 seconds after a loud silence, Steve spoke softly. "Buck, I have a two-word answer for you. Are you ready?" "I'm ready." "Staten Island." "Are you telling me that? Don't say the name, Buck. You never know who's listening." "So you're threatening me with, I'm not threatening. So you're threatening me with, I'm not threatening. I'm warning. Let me say I'm cautioning you. And let me remind you, Steve, that I don't warn well. You remember that, don't you? From ages ago, when we worked together, and you thought I was the toughest bird dog you ever sent on a story? Just don't go sniffing the wrong briar patch, Buck. Let me ask you then, Steve. Careful, please. You want to talk to me on another line? No, Buck. I just want you to be careful what you say so I can be too. Buck began scribbling furiously on a yellow pad. "Fair enough," he said, writing, "Carpathia or Stonigal rest for Eric Miller." Writing Carpathia or Stonigal rest for Eric Miller. What I want to know is this. If you think I should stay off the ferry, is it because of the guy behind the wheel, or because of the guy who supplies his fuel? "The latter," Steve said without hesitation. Buck circled Stonigal. Then you don't think the guy behind the wheel is even aware of what the fuel distributor does in his behalf. Correct. So if someone got too close to the pilot might be protected and not even know it. So if someone got too close to the pilot might be protected and not even know it. Correct. But if he found out about it, he'd deal with it. That's what I expect to see soon. I can't comment on that. Can you tell me who you really work for? I work for who it appears to you I work for. What in the world does that mean? I work for who it appears to you I work for. I work for who it appears to you I work for. What in the world did that mean? Carpathia or Stonegal? How could he get Steve to stay on the phone from within? How could he get Steve to stay on the phone from within the plaza that might be bugged? You work for the Romanian businessman. Of course. Buck nearly kicked himself. That could be either Carpathia or Stonegal. You do? He said, hoping for more. My boss moves mountains, doesn't he? Steve said. He sure does, Buck said, circling Carpathia this time. You must be pleased with everything going on these days. I am. Buck scribbled Carpathia. End times. Antichrist. And you're telling me straight up that the other issue I raised is dangerous but also hogwash. Total roll in the muck. And I shouldn't even broach the subject with him, in spite of the fact that I'm a writer who covers all the bases and asks the tough questions. If I thought you would consider mentioning it, I can encourage the interviewer of the story. Boy, it didn't take long for you to become a company man. After the core group meeting, Rayford Steele talked privately with Bruce Barnes and was updated on the meeting with Buck. I can't discuss the private matters, Bruce said, but only one thing stands in the way of my being convinced that this Carpathia guy is the Antichrist. I can't make it compute geographically. Almost every end times a writer I respect believes the Antichrist will come out of Western Europe, maybe Greece or Italy or Turkey. Rayford didn't know what to make of that. Rayford didn't know what to make of that. You notice Carpathia doesn't look Romanian. Aren't they mostly dark? Yeah, let me call Mr. Williams. He gave me a number. I wonder how much more he knows about Carpathia. Bruce dialed and put Buck on the speakerphone. Ray Steele is with me. Hello, Hey, Captain, Buck said. We're just doing some studying here, Bruce said, and we've hit a snag. He told Buck what they had found and asked for more information. Well, it comes from a town, one of the large university towns called Cluj, and oh, he does? I guess he thought he was from a mountainous region, because of his name. His name, Buck repeated, doodling on his legal pad. Being named after the Carpathian Mountains and all? Or does that name mean something else over there? Buck sat up straight, and it hit him. Steve had been trying to tell him he worked for Stonegal and not Carpathia. And of course, all the new UN delegates would feel beholden to Stonegal because he had introduced them to Carpathia. Maybe Stonegal was the Antichrist. Where had his lineage begun? Well, Buck said, trying to concentrate, maybe he was named after the mountains. But he was born in Cluj and his ancestry way back is Roman. That accounts for the blonde hair and the blue eyes. Bruce thanked him and asked if he would see Buck in church the next day. Rayford thought Buck sounded distracted and non-committal. I haven't ruled it out, Buck said. Yes, Buck thought, hanging up. I'll be there all right. He wanted every last bit of input before he went to New York to write a story that could cost him his career and maybe his life. He didn't know the truth, but he had never backed off from looking for it, and he wouldn't begin now. He phoned Hadi Durham. Hadi, he said, you're going to get a call inviting you to New York. I already did. They wanted me to ask you, but I told them to do it themselves. They did. They want you to see Carpathia again, provide him some companionship next week if you're free. I know and I am, and I will. I'm advising you not to do it. She laughed. Right. I would have turned down a date with the most powerful man in the world? I don't think so. That would be my advice. Whatever for. Because you don't strike me as that kind of girl. First, I'm not a girl. I'm almost as old as you are, and I don't need a parent or legal guardian. I'm talking as a friend. You're not my friend, Buck. It was obvious you didn't even like me. I tried to shove you off onto Rayford Steele's little girl, and I'm not sure you even had the brains to pick up on that. Hottie, maybe I don't know you, but you don't seem the type that would allow yourself to be taken advantage of by a stranger. You're pretty much a stranger, and you're trying to tell me what to do. Well, are you that kind of person? By not passing along the invitation, was I protecting you from something you might enjoy? You'd better believe it. I can't talk you out of it. You can't even try, she said, and she hung up. Buck shook his head and leaned back in his chair, holding the yellow pad in front of him. My boss moves mountains, Steve had said. Carpathia is a mountain. Sonegal is the mover, and Shaker behind him. Steve thinks he's really wired and deep. He is not only press secretary to the man Hottie Durham correctly called the most powerful man on Earth, but Steve is also actually in league with the man behind the man. Buck wondered what Rayford or Chloe would do if they knew Hottie had been invited to New York to be Carpathia's companion for a few days. In the end, he decided it was none of his or their business. Rayford and Chloe watched for Buck until the last minute the next morning, but they could no longer save a seat for him when the sanctuary and the balcony filled. When Bruce began his message, Chloe nudged her father and pointed out the window, down onto the walk before the front door. There, in a small crowd, listening to an external speaker, was Buck. Rayford raised a celebratory fist and whispered to Chloe, "Wonder what you're going to pray for this morning." Bruce played the former pastor's videotape, told his own story again, talked briefly about prophecy, invited people to receive Christ, and then opened the microphone for personal accounts. As it happened the previous 2 weeks, people streamed forward and stood in line until well after 1 in the afternoon, eager to tell how they now finally trusted Christ. Chloe told her father that she had wanted to be first, as he had been, but by the time she made her way down from the last row of the balcony, she was one of the last. She told her story, including the sign she believed God had given her in the form of a friend who sat beside her on the flight home. Rayford knew she could not see Buck over the crowd, and Rayford couldn't either. When the meeting was over, Rayford and Chloe went outside to find Buck, but he was gone. They went for lunch with Bruce, and when they got home, Chloe found a note from Buck on the front door. "It isn't that I didn't want to say goodbye, but I don't. I'll be back for Borough business. And maybe just to see you, if you'll allow it. I've got a lot to think about right now, as you know, and frankly, I don't want my attraction to you to get in the way of that thinking, and it would. You are a lovely person, Chloe, and I was moved to tears by your story. You had told me before, but to hear it in that place and in that circumstance this morning was beautiful. Would you do something I never asked anyone to do for me ever before? Would you pray for me? I will call on you or see you soon. I promise. Buck. Buck felt more alone than ever on the flight home. He was in coach on a full plane, but he knew no one. He read several sections of the Bible from the Bible Bruce had given him and had marked for him, prompting the woman next to him to ask questions. He answered in such a way that she could tell he was not in the mood for conversation. He didn't want to be rude, but neither did he want to mislead anyone with his limited knowledge. Sleep was no easier for him that night, though he refused to allow himself to pace. He was going into a meeting in the morning that he had been warned to stay away from. Bruce Barnes had sounded convinced that if Nikolai Carpathia were the Antichrist, Buck ran the danger of being mentally overcome, brainwashed, hypnotized, or worse. As he wearily showered and dressed in the morning, Buck concluded he had come a long way from thinking that the religious angle was on the fringe. He had gone from used puzzlement as people thinking that their loved ones had flown to heaven to believing he knew that much of what was happening had been foretold in the Bible. He was no longer wondering or doubting, he told himself. There was no other explanation for the two witnesses in Jerusalem, nor for the disappearances. And the furthest stretch of all, this business of an Antichrist who deceived so many, well, in Buck's mind, it was no longer an issue of whether it was literal or true. He was long past that. He had already progressed to try to decide who the Antichrist was, Carpathia or Stonagle. Buck still leaned towards Stonagle. He slung his bag over his shoulder, tempted to take the gun from his bedside table, but knowing he would never get it through the metal detectors. Anyway, he sensed that was not the kind of protection he needed. What he needed was safekeeping for his mind and for his spirit. Okay, so that's chapter 24 of Left Behind, part 1. Take care, everybody. Another video from the IS-34 Tribulation Force channel. Take care, everyone.